Welcome everyone. It's good to be back at the US Chess School. So I have an interesting game for us to look at today. This was a game that I played with Black against a friend of mine, Pantala Harikrishna, at the World Team Championship 2015. It was a really dynamic game and had a lot of very interesting moments, and I think was very interesting. It was my second game of the tournament. I had lost in round 1 to Ding Liren, but this was my first time playing board 1 for the US national team. That was back in 2015 when, let's just say, things were a little different. Yeah, I was playing with Hari in this game, and let's get started. So, game started off as a Sicilian, and Hari played this move, h3. So does anybody, obviously this is sort of a trendy move, does anybody know like what some of the main ideas are for Black now and how he should proceed according to the modern state of theory? Yeah, so Brian Tay has this right. Brian, you want to share with us? You need to unmute, right? Okay, let me ask you to unmute.
Hello.
Yeah.
So here I'd play like e5, h5 to prevent g4.
Yeah, so there's this line, e5 is the main move, and then nowadays actually people are trying knight b3 a little bit, and after knight d2, h5 is the main move. And I had this position against Duda some years later, which was also a very interesting game. Sepper is saying you played g6 a lot here. Yeah, that's a reasonable move. It's a bit risky. I beat Jeffrey with it the only time I played it. It was actually quite a nice game, but I'm not totally sure I believe in it fully. So anyhow, this one continued with e5. But after knight d2, as a couple of people have pointed out, h5 is certainly the current state of theory, which stops white from playing g4, and in some cases it can discourage knight g3 because of h4. And it's an interesting position. I'm not entirely convinced that Black is equalizing, but it's definitely worth a try, and that's certainly the modern move. But in this game, I played b5, which nowadays I think does not enjoy the greatest reputation, but it doesn't look totally stupid, of course. I mean, Black plays a6 in the knight, or if a big point is to play b5 later to gain space on the queen side, clear the b7 score for the bishop. But here, I think white should be a bit careful. So you have to think carefully. What should white play here and why? So Ariane is suggesting g4. That's not totally stupid, but I think it's not best. So one thing we have to realize is that when Black plays b5, he's sort of weakening his queen side a little bit, which could become relevant because normally what white often would want to do in this position is to play like g4, bishop g2, knight g3, and start some kind of kingside attack. But when Black has already thrown b5 at you, you can sort of think maybe I can change some things up a little bit. So for example, if you play g4 here, Ryo is suggesting this very interesting line with b4, g5. So my big point, if I recall, was after b4, I thought that this position was okay for Black. There was some line like this, and as far as I recall, at the time of the game, people thought this was like a reasonable chance for white, like to play a3 very quickly, but I believe Black can play h5 equally fast. And if I recall, h5 here is actually a very important move, because if you don't play it, white will play knight g3 and you'll lose your chance. And here, Ryo is saying that there is some line here. This is some new, fresh stuff that I'm not aware of, but apparently he claims white's slightly better here. I don't know. This has been a long time since I've ever looked at anything like this. But Ariana is saying white's better here as well. I'm going to cheat and use the machine because I'm curious, but I think white has better ways of playing than this. So is g5 better for white now, or are you guys just blowing smoke? Stockfish is being problematic. Excuse Leela, I guess. No, my Stockfish is being annoying. g5. Are we sure this is better for white, guys? Really? Okay, for whatever reason, my super stockfish in the basement is not working great. Let's try my local stockfish. I don't know. Bishop takes g7, and this doesn't seem convincing to me. Black is a pawn up, and I don't see the brilliant compensation here. Anyhow, that's sort of neither here nor there. But basically, my point was, b5, I think, does a reasonable job of discouraging white from playing g4 because I'm ready to play b4 next. And so Troy, I think, has the right idea. Do you want to share with us, Troy, what you think white should play and why?
Well, here knight g3, defending e4. I mean, we don't have to play g4 in this opening necessarily against b5, since they pretty much weaken the queen side, as you said.
Yeah, so knight g3 has some points to it, a lot. The first one and most basic is we're defending this pawn, which obviously is pretty nice. But there's a couple other ones. One, we'd really like to fight for this d5 square, sort of Sveshnikov style, and if you can go like bishop g5 and knight h5 and really challenge this knight on f6, then you will be able to you will potentially be able to win for the fight for the d5 square. Furthermore, if white is able to play a4 and then convinced back to play b4, then this bishop gets a really nice square on c4, where I think it's clearly better developed than it would be on g2. So there's quite a few reasons that white should play knight g3. Now we're going to try playing black again. If I recall, for this game, I hadn't checked knight g3. I had only prepared for g4, which is like the direct move more in the style of the h3 Najdorf, or for bishop g5, which would be like, okay, I want to go knight d5, knight ec3, and, you know, take all of your stuff this way. I remember some line here that was kind of funny. It was like this, here, this one, and then I believe at some point there's knight takes f6 and you have to play g takes f6, but black gets pretty good counterplay. That's neither here nor there. In any case, the move knight g3 came. And at this point, I actually think I made a pretty serious mistake. So I'd like everyone to take a second and see if they can figure out how black should proceed. So I think it should be pretty clear what moves we want to play, but choosing what move order we play them in is going to be the harder part. And this is where you have to be a bit careful. So Aradia has a point. Aradia, you want to share with us? Okay, so let's ask to unmute.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, I think the idea would be bishop b7 and then knight d7, knight b6. And I think we should go bishop b7 first, because if we go knight d7, there's like knight d5, which is really annoying.
You're worried about knight d5 in this position?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason to be concerned about that. Why can't we take it?
Probably e takes.
Okay, but I mean, here black is very happy, I think. He gets a lot of his typical kingside counterplay. I don't think knight d5 is something you should be wildly scared of. But anyhow, you said your line was bishop b7. How did you expect the game to proceed?
Like, well, white would probably play like b3. Actually,
Whoa, no, b3 I think.
Well, knight f5.
But knight f5 doesn't threaten anything. This is the move. And that's where things get a little confusing. So the real question becomes, I mean, I think it's pretty clear here that we want to go knight bd7 and bishop b7. It should also be pretty clear that white wants to go bishop g5. These are the moves that people should be considering, and you should consider very carefully, do we want to play knight bd7 first, or do we want to play bishop b7 first? And there's actually a pretty notable difference.
Okay, so we're going to go with knight d7 because after bishop g5, we have h6, where we can take with the knight. I mean, if we have played bishop b7, then we would have to take with the queen.
Okay, so here your point is to play h6. You had mentioned bishop h4, g5. Obviously, white's not going to fall for that, but your big point was that we can take with the knight in this position, and you thought it was worth your time to play h6. Yeah, I think this is a really good point. I think basically if we want to think about what's really most important in this position, I think it's the d5 square. And in order for white to effectively fight for that, he can very easily trade this bishop for one of black's knights. That will not be a problem. But what he really needs to do is trade this knight for one of black's knights as well. So the problem with bishop b7, which is what I played, is that following bishop g5, now I have to spend a tempo playing knight bd7, because I really want to be able to take back on f6 with the knight. This gives white the time he needs to play knight h5. And here I do think black is worse. Like, I cannot play bishop e7 because the g7 pawn is loose. So I don't have a great way to break this pin, and if I just sort of brute force it, like say we go h6, take, and I don't know, maybe I'm not sure if I want to start with a4 or not, but it's probably pretty reasonable, and we get this position. Things are really starting to go wrong for black. We didn't manage to fight for the d5 square effectively enough, and this is in large part because white was able to trade off this g3 knight very easily. Conversely, if we go knight bd7 here, and white plays bishop g5 here after h6, if white wants to trade off this knight, he's going to have to sideline his queen like this, and I think the queen is now really misplaced. Also, I can develop the bishop to e6, and for example, if I go bishop e6 and I'm stopping you from playing knight d5, and I'm potentially even threatening b4, and I don't know, if white goes like rook d1, I play rook c8, and you still cannot play knight d5. White's position is really not coordinating nearly as well. So it's very important that we don't let white play knight h5 that easily, and bishop b7 actually gave him the opportunity to do so. So indeed here, I do think after knight h5, white is just better. Let me just make sure the machine confirms this and I'm not speaking total nonsense. Yeah, darn it, why is my stockfish being stupid? Leela's fine. I have to fix the stockfish. But yeah, knight h5 and white is clearly better, sure. While if we had started with knight bd7, I mean, there's still games to be played, but like, and white has chances in other ways, like this a4 is the best move and it gets interesting, but like this thing here, I don't think is as great. Like h6 and black is fine, as we can see. Anyhow, I played bishop b7, which I think was a pretty serious mistake. And then Hari did play bishop g5, but thankfully for me, he did not find the right move in this position and he played a4. So, okay, black obviously has to play b4. And knight d5 comes. So here, here bishop takes d5 is pretty thematic. It's sort of, but now we get this position, and black has a decision to make. How do we want to play here? Brian says g6. I don't think g6 is going to work that well. We have to think a lot about how white wants to coordinate his pieces as well, and he does have a pretty dangerous idea available to him. So you want to figure out how white wants to coordinate and then deal with it accordingly. Knight c5 I think doesn't do very much. So Brian, you have a move for us you want to share?
Well, the white can put the bishop on c4 and we won't have much. So we can play knight b6 to prevent it. Also, it attacks the d5 pawn.
So thought. Are you worried at all about knight h5? I worry this position could get very bad very fast. Yeah, this looks like bad news, I think. You cannot play bishop e7. If you take this one, I refuse to believe you're going to survive. This just looks like the end of the world. This seems really bad for black. So... yeah, basically here what a couple of people have pointed out is I think what white would really like to do is play the move a5. This stops queen a5, it stops knight b6, bishop c4 to overprotect everything, b3, and then he will have artificially isolated both of these pawns and he can start playing like queen e2, rook a4, bishop d2, and basically our entire queen side is going to fall apart. So I think we should be very careful not to let this happen. A couple people have suggested that we play queen a5. This is actually not so stupid, but I still really don't like letting this bishop come to c4. And while we did not let white play a5, we're using a very heavy piece to do a very menial job of blockading this pawn, which feels less than ideal to me. And as such, I do believe white should be better here. You're never going to want to move your queen out of the way and allow a5 to come, but that's such a good piece to be performing such a sad role. So someone says knight b6, but say we go bishop b3. I really don't believe you're taking this pawn from me. Like, it feels like queen f3 should be completely crushing if you do. I mean, this bishop will be so good all of a sudden. But yeah, otherwise this position looks very suspicious for black to me. It's hard to make a move. Does anybody like want to play this position for black? Oh, I know I don't. I mean, this looks like bad news. But so given that we're kind of scared of this plan of bishop c4 and b3 to solidify the position, well, okay, black's first move shouldn't be like crazy difficult, I don't think, but what should we play? Rook c8 drops the a6 pawn. We want to be a bit careful about that, guys. Let's get rid of these arrows. So knight c5 has been called, but I don't see how this stops white from accomplishing his plan. He can go bishop c4. So Sepahur, I think that's better. You want to share with us, but choose which move you like more?
So I think the move is queen c7.
Yeah, I think this, or actually apparently I played bishop e7 here, because here bishop c4 I guess is not dangerous yet, but after bishop e7, a5, I guess this, I probably should have remembered that better. But yeah, this queen c7 move is extremely important. Like, if you were to just let white go, go bishop c4 here, I think the position would get very bad very fast. So there was queen c7 in this position. Sorry guys, that was clumsy and unprofessional of me. So this position is actually pretty interesting. White can play knight f5, and I think this is what I was most scared of, and I had checked I believe I had checked this variation during the game, and I thought this was white's best option. And he's going to lose the d5 pawn for sure. Like, I will go, like, if he plays, I don't know, bishop d3 or something, h6, there's no way he's going to take this knight. Like, that would be horrible. But let's say he does, like, bishop d2 and just gives me this pawn and starts castling and, you know, f4 stuff. I think despite the pawn less, white has a serious initiative, and this, I thought it was uncleared, like, at the time. I know the computer said it was equal. Looking at it with more modern eyes, I suspect that black is worse, but anyhow, that was a thought. But during the game, it occurred to me here, I've played queen c7 to stop white from playing bishop c4, and his whole plan is to go bishop c4, b3, anchor everything so nothing gets attacked, and then start going rook a4 and harassing my pawn. So what would be like a really natural move for white to play here to try to execute that plan? Yes, Austin, well spotted. So, b3. I hadn't seen this, I hadn't prepared this before the game. Now, it helps that I knew the computer didn't like it. But here we have to think, what are we actually going to do? Because if white is allowed to play bishop c4, anchor everything, I think the queen side will probably just collapse. It might take a little while, but I don't believe we have any major counterplay, and the b4 pawn should fall. So here black has a really important move. And I found it while Hari was thinking, so I was hoping he would play b3, but he didn't. And be careful, guys. Try to find the right idea for black. All right, so Sepahur has an interesting line. Knight takes d5. This looks very suspicious to me. So takes, check, king e2, and you claim this is okay for black, yes? Perpetually, you say. I think. 65, huh? I think, takes, check. Does this move ruin your day? Maybe not. Queen a1. Sure, though. What goes on now, guys? Queen c2 and here. This might just be totally lost, actually. Bishop d3 next. Okay, rook c8, but come on, I go bishop d3, knight g5, knight d6. I have infinite good moves here. This looks completely lost. this move knight e4 might be a huge problem because, I mean, you don't have so many candidate moves. You can either take c2 or you can take a1. If you take a1, I can probably take both rooks, and then I don't believe you have perpetual anymore, but I'm wondering if I can be more vile somehow. Say we go knight d6 check. King e7, knight f5 check. And this is starting to look pretty bad. So if you come back this way, now like I'm just winning with material. Like I don't need to do anything special. You can't castle and position is horrible. Like you can start with queen a6 or knight g7 or something. And because you've already moved your king, you'll never castle. So that looks really bad. If you come up, I suspect this has to be mate. Check. So king f4, check, and that's mate, yeah? And if you go this way, just check and queen e3 mate. Yeah, so this is, here you get mated. My suspicion is this knight e4 move is a crusher. At least I don't see a defense yet. Should we cheat and see if this is right? All right, let's cheat. Queen a8 wins and knight e4 does not. What do you know? We all suck. So this was right. Queen takes d5 is good. Apparently bishop c4 was reasonable too. But okay, here queen takes a8 does win apparently. King e7 and then queen d5 only winning move. That's not easy, but it is there. What is wrong with knight e4? Here apparently black is just fine if he just castles. Bishop d3. Am I like an idiot or are we not up a piece? Okay, knight f6, and then my queen's in trouble. Okay, this one I missed. Very nice machine. Ah, stupid stockfish. I hate these engines. They make me feel like such an idiot. I thought white was a piece up there, but apparently knight f6 at the end was good. So that long story short, though, that was more interesting than I gave it credit for, but it still did not work. Let's try to find something better for black here. Christopher's got this. Christopher, you want to share with us?
Yeah, so the move is knight h5.
Yeah.
Threatening the knight and the bishop. And if queen takes h5, queen c3, of course.
Right.
And if bishop takes e7, there's queen c3 check too.
And knight g3.
Knight takes h5, bishop takes g5.
Yeah, so this is the way that we can take advantage of white's lagging developments a little bit. There's nothing particularly good for him here. So if bishop e7, we can go queen c3, and now white resigns because king e2, knight f4 is mate. Maybe he doesn't resign, but like here, okay, this is bad news. And so, and after knight h5, other moves, you can try this, and white can go grab a pawn. But like, okay, first of all, if you don't grab the pawn here, like if you play bishop c4, you're just going to get completely killed, I think, with like the pieces on the black squares, like knight g3, f5. I think strategically this is basically crushing. Like, I don't know, white might win a queenside pawn eventually, but he's going to get clobbered in the center and on the dark squares first. After knight takes g7, though, and we go something like this, it's now check. Okay, white's king is on e2, and we go e4, and you cannot move your g-pawn to develop the bishop because of queen f3, and you cannot play queen d4 because of queen c2, and black, I think, quite obviously has enough for a pawn here. So this is what we have to see, is that this b3 fails for that reason. All right, so Hari played bishop e2. I castled. Knight f5 came, bishop d8. At this point, I was still in my preparation, and because, I mean, I checked bishop e2. I hadn't checked b3 before the game, but while he was thinking, it occurred to me that it seemed like a move I should be ready for. So knight f5, bishop d8. I want to skip through the next couple moves because they're not super interesting. Here, g6, check, and now f4 came. So this position here, I knew I should be basically fine. Like, I don't know, unless either knight c5 or g6 was just some colossal mistake, which I sort of doubted during the game. I kind of understood black has to be fine here, but there's a very big difference between being fine objectively and like having an easy position to play. I still think it's pretty obvious black has some problems to solve, practically speaking, even if we know the position is okay. So here, I'd like you guys to take some time, decide how black should play in this position, and come up with how we want to continue. Let's try to be more specific, and don't give me illegal moves, and please give me actual variations, not just a move, and hope for the best. This position is clearly sharp enough that you should have real variations in mind.
So I just wanted to take the knight. He's giving us the piece, so we might as well take it. And then he takes on e5, king g7, takes on f6, and takes. And then, so there's two things that white can do. If he plays rook takes f6, king takes f6, then the king can just run away to the queen side, and this is not going to work out.
Okay, so you're saying the word just a lot, which already is a sign that probably something is wrong. But suppose I start with queen d4 check?
King e7.
Okay, I think you're, like, even if you're not mated, like, next move, I think you're completely lost if I take this pawn from you. Like, material is pretty darn close to equal. Your king will never find safety anywhere on the board. I start going queen h4, b4, c4. I think the game is approximately over here. At least I don't see, I mean, it looks horrendous for black, I think. So I'm not sure I love that. You're right in that, like, if you got one more tempo to play bishop e5 here, I think, like, black would be extremely happy, but you were right about what was critical, but I think you have to calculate a little bit closer at the end, because after queen takes b4, I think this game is essentially over. I don't know, what's the machine gonna say? Let's see what machine says. It's a stupid local engine, but okay. Apparently everything wins, but queen takes b4 was the human move. And yeah, we're gone here. Okay.
Like plus.
Yeah. So that did not quite work. Let's see. Aradia, you want to share with us? You had an idea as well? Okay.
Yeah, so I thought to play like e4 because like the white has two bishops, so that we do not want to open the file. And then with I was thinking we could go like queen b7 to like attack the d pawn, but now I'm looking like bishop c4 kind of shuts all that down. So I'm trying to like find like other plans.
Also, I'm concerned like f5 comes. Like, here, you may well regret opening this diagonal. If I start throwing g5, g4, g5 at you, you can get mated in like 3 more moves. And queen d4 is in the air as well when you're all sorts of pinned, and then knight g4 starts coming, and bishop h6 is threatened, and queen b4 is threatened. I really don't like playing e4 and giving white the d4 square. So that I don't think is great. But yeah, I think the position it's difficult. So let's see where someone else had an idea. Brian Tay had a thought. You want to share with us, Brian? No, you don't. Okay. Anyone else want to share with us? Okay, Ariane, I didn't see what you said, but I'm going to unmute you and let you share what you want. Okay.
So here, knight d7.
Which one?
F.
Knight f d7, and
yeah.
I guess why?
So like now, if you want, you can take the. So now like you're kind of threatening to take the knight.
Mm-hmm. So I'll say I go f5.
Yeah, if f5, maybe you can put the knight back.
So burning 2 tempi voluntarily just to provoke my pawn to the f5 square?
Yes.
It's not the dumbest thing ever, but I still don't like the position. Maybe g4 is annoying, and also sort of I'm thinking like, what's white's next move? It's f5 might not be exactly what I want to play, but it's not totally stupid to rule out. I think burning 2 tempi doesn't feel right. I mean, this certainly doesn't look terrible. I mean, I don't see like a direct win or anything like that, but it's definitely not great either. So Vihan is getting closer. Still, I think there's something to be desired there. You also have to think about the structure and how it could change and whether that will be in black's favor or not. Because clearly f4, white, this structure will not maintain. One of three things is going to happen. We're going to see f takes e5 happen when black takes back with the pawn. We're going to see e takes f4 happen, or like some piece takes back on e5, either way leading to the same structure, or white's going to play f5. I think it's pretty clear that this pawn is not going to stay on f4 very long. And we have to consider which of these structures we're happiest with for black. Want to have a thought? No, it's tough, but I just want to calculate a little bit. Okay, so Austin has a good point. He says, we got to find a way to get the d8 bishop to e5. So Austin, if I'm not mistaken, what you're claiming is you want these two pawns to disappear and then just stick your bishop on the e5 square. Is that right? In general, I think the structure we would really like to see is the structure where we go e takes f4. You don't really want to allow white to go f takes e5, d e5, and then slam d6 and bishop c4 on your face. That looks like bad news. So the critical move is certainly e takes f4. And now white has two options that we should be ready for. Probably the scarier one is to play rook takes f4. Because now we have this, like if white is allowed to go queen d4 next and then rook f1 and knight g4, you're definitely dead. But here there's an important line to calculate. And I think black ends up okay as a result. So does anybody have a thought of how black should proceed? And I'll give you guys a hint that Austin's idea of bringing the bishop to e5 makes a lot of sense. You have to be careful. Keep in mind also your b4 pawn is loose here. Knight f d7, I mean, strategically it makes some sense, but you're going to lose the b4 pawn, which I don't think you're happy about. Knight ce4, queen d4 comes, and then I think you've solved one problem, but you have a lot of other problems. Okay, Raya, you want to share with us?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with king takes h6. Like the only move is rook f6, and after king g6, there's two moves: rook f3, rook f4. Let's say rook f3 first.
Okay.
Then we have f5, queen d4 check, bishop f6, queen takes queen takes b4, rook a b8, and then we're fine.
No, I think we're not fine. I think we're much better. I think white's in serious trouble now. There is a line here that requires some understanding, though. I think this move queen d2 is pretty annoying because we are threatening both bishop h6 and queen takes b4. But if I recall, I wanted to do this idea. And my thought was in this position, I don't actually think I'm worse here. So queen takes b4, rook b8 is a non-starter for white. But like, if we think about what's going on, we're basically saying the only asset white has is he's an exchange up. But let's take an aggregate of pieces. Which of these three pieces are better? Do we really believe that white's two rooks and bishop are better than black's rook, bishop, and knight here? I actually think the answer is no, we don't. The knight on c5 is fantastic. A bishop on e5 will be fantastic. And one thing I've often talked about with exchange sacrifices, the first thing by far you always consider whenever evaluating any exchange sacrifice, how good are the rooks? And the answer for white here is they are not very good. And they don't have much scope to become better. So my sense is I think that black is okay here despite being a full exchange down. And this was a key variation that I had calculated during the game. I'm not sure what modern machinery will say. We can ask Leela her opinion, but I think that this should be fine for black. I don't know what Leela thinks, but let's see. Yeah, it says I'm fine. I mean, it's not surprising that I'm not better. I am down material after all, but black is definitely fine. Anyhow, so instead of this, Hari took with the bishop on f4, which disallows this option of king takes h6. And now we have to think again for black. There's an important move here that we're going to want to find. Very well spotted, Vihan. Why is that, and why is that the best move? There's a very specific reason behind it, and not just general. That's not quite right. That's not quite what I had in mind, but there's a very specific reason that that there's this move I think is important. Also, you have to think, what is white's next move going to be? Yeah, everyone sees this. Queen d4 is white's next move. This does a few things. First off, threatens to simply grab this pawn, which would be really annoying. But also, if white is allowed to play queen d4, next up is knight g4 when this pin is a huge problem. And then bishop h6 is coming. And if white goes queen d4, I think if he goes queen d4 and knight g4, you resign. And if otherwise, like, knight g4 is a huge threat. And like, imagine this position. Go stop knight g4. It's really hard to do. Like, I think the position would get really bad really fast. So a few people have given me some interesting ideas, but the one I like the most is rook e8 to freeze this queen by attacking the bishop on e2, as a couple of people gave, and then also queen e4 is now an unstable square because of rook e4 in some cases. But yeah, I don't think white can get away with queen d4 here if we take this one. And then we're ready to meet knight g4 with rook e4, and I think black is good to go here. The bishop h6, king h8, and we're out of steam. So I really like this rook e8 move. It's not the only good move, but I definitely think this is the most natural and best one, because it also develops a new piece. All right, so Hari played bishop f3. Now, already this is a really good sign, because it means this bishop on f3 is basically only performing passive roles. He's just blocked his open f file, and bishop f3 may well have been the best move, which is a testament to that white's position isn't that great. He's now blocked his open f file. He has released the pressure upon this a6 pawn, which of course wasn't like hanging, but you could imagine in some variations it being loose could matter. And that means that both of these things speak heavily in black's favor. Still, though, queen d4 is on the way, and this is something we really want to be ready for. And black has more than one good move here, but I think there's one in particular that really stands out to me as a nice one. And you want to be a little bit careful. So a couple people have been giving me queen a7. I don't think this helps your position very much, and you may well end up regretting letting the d6 pawn become loose in some cases. But there's a really nice move here, I think. It puts white in a bad way. Okay, so a couple of people have given me knight fe4, which is a very ambitious move. I could easily, some people are giving bishop f6 next. I could easily imagine black also playing bishop g5 next. Could be very reasonable, or even f5 and trying to like artificially isolate the knight on h6. My concern though is, can white take this one? Or maybe knight g4 first? That's probably better. What if we go knight g4 and stop black from playing bishop f6? This seems like an issue. Queen d4 is on the way, which is going to be annoying. Yeah, I'm not sure I love this one, actually. It's not a terrible move, but yeah, everyone's giving me h5, which is probably best, but... Okay, so say we go check, king h7, and I take this one. You take with the knight, or... Okay, hang on. Bishop h6 does not work because of f5, right? But okay, if I take this one, let's say knight takes e4, and then no, is this? This doesn't seem that convincing. It's probably not terrible, but I don't know. This is f5 and then knight f2 and something like this. Don't know. This might not be so bad for black, or for, I don't know. It's unclear for sure. I'm just not sure if I love it. The king is long-term weak. The knight is unstable on e4, which means that eventually white's rook will land on e6 and the d6 pawn is weak. But at the same time, white's queenside is falling. This strikes me as messy. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but I think we can do better than messy, if that makes sense. Like, knight fe4 is not a bad move, but I think there's one that's just much cleaner and much nicer. And it's a little bit tricky and deceptive at first glance. So knight ce4, I don't love that one either. It sort of feels a little aimless. Maybe I'm being too picky here because there's a few interesting moves, but I really like the one that I played. Give you guys some hints. Okay. All right, Vihan, that's very nice. You want to share with us what you think of that and how you made it happen?
So I wanted to play knight d7 and then follow it up with knight e5.
Yeah, so I think this move just sort of does it all. First thing we point out is that because this bishop is no longer hitting the a6 pawn, the knight does not feel such a need to remain on c5. Second point, once this knight comes to e5, any idea white has of knight g4 is going to get nipped in the bud. Third point, this bishop gets shut down. Fourth point, queen d4 doesn't scare us anymore because the knight on e5 blocks the diagonal. It's funny, I actually think this knight, while it looks nice, is not a particularly great piece. And when we bring this knight around to e5, like, okay, let's flip this around. Take this position from white's point of view for a second. You know that black's next move is knight e5. Go find a reasonable move for white. It's actually incredibly difficult. c3, I'll take it from you. It's very hard to actually suggest anything remotely sensible for white to do here. And, okay, Raya, you want to rook a4, but, I don't know, knight e5, I execute my plan, you still cannot take on b4, so what do I care? Don't I have a check on c5, or, oh, you have, you go to the d4 square, I see your point. Even this, though, just looks terrible for white, like, takes, if I just take this one? Ah, rook a7, hang on, so check, queen d4, this really feels like it should collapse. Even if I just like take this and go bishop a5, like go stop bishop b6, and white's knight is forever sidelined on h6. This feels horrible for white. But yeah, so essentially I think that white's position now is very difficult after this knight cd7 move, which I really like. We're running shorter on time than I was expecting, so I'm going to skip through a little bit. Hari played queen c3 here and offered me a draw, which was not accepted. And then got this position. And I think there was a better way to play than what I ended up doing. So yeah, here, I played the second best move, and I was clearly better for sure, but I think I could have basically put the game out of reach almost right away. So what should black play here and why, and what are your variations to back it up? Alright, so some interesting lines. A couple people have given me rook c5, which I hadn't even considered, or at least not seriously. Let's think this one over. So, Aryan, you want to talk? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Rook takes a5.
You want rook a5 in this position?
Yes.
Okay, so let's suppose I take a6. Or rook
Bishop
a5
b6
first.
check.
Sure.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
bishop.
Okay, king h2, let's say.
Now here I take on a1, and now maybe rook to a8.
Yeah, this sort of looks good no matter what. But what if, I think the more critical point and the one I was more worried about is what if we take this one and then go c4? This is the line that bothered me. And,
Bishop b6.
and then I go king h2.
Knight e4.
Then I have bishop e5 and take f7 and not so easy.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was the key position where I needed to see something and I didn't. Ryo, that's not right either. I had seen this far and I thought this was not that easy. But if we this even if I didn't find the best move, this may still have been better than what I played, but there is a really nice idea here that I think basically puts white out of his misery. Be a little bit careful. Okay. Multiple choice question, guys. a5, a4. Did I consider this or did I not consider this? Yeah, Ryan's got this. Ryan, you want to share with us?
Yeah, so we really want to trade darks for bishops. I mean, obviously white wants to go bishop g5 here. So we go knight d7, attacking the bishop.
Hit this bishop with tempo, and after what? Let's say, I don't know.
Anything. Yeah, and now bishop e3.
This is the move I missed.
Yeah,
It's over.
he can't take the pawn, obviously, and then, yeah, black's better for sure.
The game is completely over. He must play this, and then, like, he will never attack anything ever, and my a-pawn will win the game, and it's a great knight against a bad bishop. This was the way. I missed this knight ed7 followed by bishop e3. It's sort of hard to consider knight ed7 because this knight is so good on e5. I had literally just gone, like, you know, knight d7 to c5. I brought it back to d7 to e5. You think, wait a minute, go back to d7 again, but it points out we're just in time to get bishop e3 in. And we get there just in time before white can start making trouble with g4, g5. So this basically just wins the game. Instead, I took on d5 because I didn't see that knight fd7 resource. And there's no doubt black is still better here. But the position is not nearly as clean. So there's one more line at the end here thought we could look at. Okay, take a knight f7. So what does black do now? A couple of people have given me rook a7, but I believe knight d6 handles it. And if bishop c5, there is knight e4. Or bishop c7, knight e4. So here white is okay. In fact, probably white is better. So let's play a little better than that. Giving me like e4 followed by bishop bc7, that doesn't really seem like a real variation. e4, knight g5, and I think white is very much fine. Rook a7, knight d6, bishop c7, but can't I then play knight e4 at the end, and then you're worse? Important move here. Remember, guys, always examine all checks and captures. Back to basics.
Okay, so the answer is king takes f7, and after c5, black can play rook takes c2, c takes b6, rook b2. And
Yeah,
white cannot defend the b6 pawn.
Right, because if bishop d5 check, the bishop is hit with tempo, so he doesn't have time to play b7. So here white will lose b6. And that's the key point that you need to see, and this is how black can press. After bishop f3, I believe this was like move 39. Still, even with 30 seconds, you can play better than what I did. What do we play here, guys? Okay. So far, 4 answers, and all 4 people have gotten it wrong. Yes, Christopher. So, yeah, just about everybody is getting this wrong, but you're making the same mistake as me. So yeah, you really want to play king e6 here. I took b6. I mean, like, I probably played this move almost immediately. I didn't have much time. It's like, oh, you just grab the pawn and you're in pretty good shape. But the problem is now g4 comes, and this knight is going to get destabilized. Now, you still have winning chances. Like, I probably should have played g5, but then h4 comes, or bishop e4 for that matter, and things are starting to get really annoying. If I had taken one move to play king e6 first, he still cannot save this pawn because on b7 I have e4. Now he's not going to get g4 in, and that's a huge difference. And it makes, I think this position should be routinely winning for black as a result. Because after I played rook b6 and g4 came, all of a sudden it's an absolute nightmare to stop the counterplay. Like if I play, I don't know, king here and he goes g5, if knight d5, he can take it in rook f7. If knight h5, I don't know, bishop g4 check, and it's, if knight d7, bishop g4, like this move g4 is incredibly annoying to deal with. And so I played g5, but there came h4. And I should have played h6 here, but even this, like, I think that white has very real drawing chances at this point. There's not much material left on the board. I could even, like, a move like bishop d1. It's like, okay, rook f5 is coming. It's going to be very annoying to put this game away. I still have chances there, but like the way I played with king e7 or with king g6, rook e1 came, and yeah, now this I think is just a draw. There's nothing else to be done. I can make no further progress in this g4 move, like forcing my king passive and not letting me play like e5, e4 and get my king to e5 was the decisive error. If I go king e6 in this position and g4 is still illegal and I'm ready for e4 next and then king e5 and rook takes b6, then I think black wins routinely, and I missed it with the time ticking down. And you know, you want to beat a player of Harikrishna's caliber with the black pieces. It's definitely doable, but he's only going to give you one chance, and I missed it because I didn't find king e6 here. Or actually, I got two chances. I had the bishop b6 check bishop e3 as well, but I missed those. And anyhow, yeah. So Hari held the draw here after g4. But yeah, I thought this was a really interesting game. I certainly enjoyed it a lot. It was sharp. It was dynamic. There were tense moments, chances for both sides, a lot of things to look at and learn from, lots of mistakes from, you know, good players to analyze. So good job finding stuff, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime.